Help them figure what they want out of life. But you know everything it come with a price. Wanna maximize your money and time. Might have to take the uncommon advice.
Let's dive in. So I'm excited to have you on, man. I'm excited you to join me today. Thanks for coming in on.
Thanks for buying me lunch.
Yeah. Hey, it's all it took.
That's it, dude. I'm easy.
So I'm excited to have you in, man. And I'm going to dive right in. I mean, there's a lot we'll probably dive into and talk about today, but I just want to, you've been I don't want to kind of recap your story for you, but you've been a Christian missionary. You used to run product launches for some of the biggest gurus in the space, to ultimately building one of the biggest online coaching businesses that we've seen in the last few years. And one thing I want to ask you is, what is one of the skills or characteristics you believe, because that's a big range of things, right? To go from one to the next. What's one skill set or characteristic you believe it required that you have that made that possible for you?
Man, only one?
You can do more. You can do more. Do your top three.
I think, well, at the level that we played, which was huge, right? We had a lot of employees, huge team, client roster. I think it all came down to leadership. Developing that skill of leadership was just probably the hardest one to develop and to grow into, because it wasn't natural, right? But we had over 150 employees, thousands and thousands of clients, so much responsibility. And I loved marketing. I was great at marketing. You could do that behind the scenes. But to grow and to scale a business, leadership is the number one thing that's required to get to the level that we got to. And I think even a 7-figure business, right? If you are managing people and team to achieve a certain outcome, you have to be a good leader. Mm-hmm. If not, you will fail. It's inevitable. You will fail. So I think leadership is probably, and if I were to add some more, I was going to take advantage of this since I have the mic in front of my face. A vision, I think, is another big piece, right? Leadership without vision and the ability to communicate that vision and rally people around that vision, it's almost impotent, right? And so great leadership along with great vision could be a recipe for something very amazing, impactful, profitable for any organization.
Okay. So, but you didn't start with that.
Didn't start with that.
No. So what were some of the things you did along the way to become a better leader?
Failed. I think we took risks. We had drive. That's what I had. Mm-hmm. That was the thing that got me to leadership, right? Is drive and ambition. And I knew I wanted more than what I had in my life. So I came from I was a missionary, which I had no money. I was broke as a joke. I grew up in a lower middle class family. So that was always a thing. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to stay in that place. And so the drive and ambition and my ability to work and execute was the thing that got me to a place where, oh my God, we could potentially accomplish something amazing here. So taking that and just pushing forward and going for it and being okay with failure, I think was the thing that got me to the place of opening my mind to what was possible, right? Because I grew up in the church and vision wasn't a thing. Money was almost bad, right? All of these things, these mm-hmm. beliefs, or it was very hard to come by. And so to get into that place of drive, ambition, and figuring out there's so much more available to us if we have the right mindset led me to just, I think the runway was clear of opportunity, what was possible. And so getting to that place where we were producing a good amount of revenue and income almost out of the gate with our business, when I had Traffic and Funnels, it was just, man, the next thing that we need was to become a leader. That's how we grow, and we actually take advantage of the opportunity that's in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm. And so drive, ambition, willing to work, willing to put in the work where so many people aren't. It wasn't just having an idea and going, here's my idea.
Yeah, no.
I'm going to make millions. So, and so that's huge, right? So in regards to the leadership, you had the drive and ambition, so you answered that. But to go back to the question on leadership, and you failed a lot to do that, to learn that. But did you hire people to help you with that? Did you read books?
Smart.
Did you read any of that?
Smart to hire a mentor. No, I actually wrote about this in my newsletter. No, man, a lot of it was learning on the job. And yeah, we read a lot of books, but the thing that's great about books, it does open your mind to possibility. The thing that books, I feel like, don't give you is coaching on the variables that you're confronted with, right? Because I have all the issues that from growing up and the patterns and my own issues as a person, right? Whether it was not knowing how to really govern my ambition and my drive and you know, not to run over people as a young, driven leader. That's something that only a mentor can help you with. And I didn't have the awareness on that, and that it would be really wise to even hire a leadership mentor coach. Because what I put value on was the growth, the strategy, all those things, but not actually being a business owner, which essentially is being a good leader. Right. And so that was something that we missed that I would, if I could go back in time, I would 100% hire some kind of leadership coach or mentor / CEO. Because my drive and my ambition led me to keep going, even though I failed with people, even though I failed with processes. And I had vision for huge revenue, right? Taking advantage of the huge opportunity in that. I didn't have vision for what it looked like to be a great leader and how to utilize people in the best possible healthy way, right? That was good for them, the organization, all those things. So there's a cost to everything. And I think, you know, you can invest into some type of mentor, or the cost is learning, time, pain, the emotions of it. And that's the way by default that I ended up choosing.
Yeah, I think as entrepreneurs, we tend to bang the head against the wall. It's the best way to go, right?
Yeah.
Figure it out the hard way. And I just to reiterate what you said, or reinforce what you're saying, leadership, that's the one thing that I've been really working on improving, right? Like figuring out, but once again, you don't know it until you're in it.
Yeah.
Right? You don't sometimes you can have the plan of leadership, but until you're faced with the challenges, and you guys have faced some big challenges going from, you know, just being you and your partner at the time to like where you grew to.
Yeah.
So what do you think what's one challenge you think that stands out to you that you learned a lesson from?
So we made a decision back in 21 that was not a good decision in hindsight. And the decision making, I think, was actually good. The actual decision was not good because the information and the data that we had was not good. So that's a huge highlight because that had multiple order consequences that were negative. So I think as a leader, someone who wants to grow, scale a business, you have to become a great decision maker. You can be the best decision maker in the world, but if the data that you're making that decision on isn't good, it's not accurate, it doesn't matter. You're already starting at a point of failure, right, with having inaccurate information. So that's a huge learning lesson that I now bring to my clients. Like, okay, man, you could be a great decision maker. What's the actual information? Have we verified the information that we're making this decision on is actually right and correct? Because if it's not, it doesn't matter, right?
Well, your decisions are only as good as the data input that you've got, right?
Absolutely.
Bad data, bad decisions. Good data, good decisions.
Yeah, it's simple, but we undervalue it and we underestimate it. And so the other part of it is, right, you're making certain assumptions in that process. Usually the assumptions have a positive bias because of ego, hubris, past successes. And so even if you are making a decision, you're like, oh yeah, like we're going to win. Because that's what we do. And that's what it seemed like for the case for us. Like even people told us like, dude, everything you touch is gold. And you start believing that own stories, man, that, and you have wrong data, right? It can end up being not a good situation. So I think that's part of what happened to us and the challenges that we had in our business is that we just assumed that, oh man, like, we'll figure it out or whatever. But when you have a lot of those stack up and then you have a lot of things you have to figure out, maybe you made a bad decision or you had bad data, it's hard to deal with that. And so that's the challenge that we had. And so I think it's important in that process as a leader. You could be a CEO of a 3-person team. It's still the same thing, maybe different level, where you have to always consider the multiple order consequence of the decision that you're making, positive and negative, right?
Yeah, that's huge. So you need to look at both sides as business owners. And I know I've done this in the past. I failed at it where it's like, I only look at the scenario and go, we're going to do this and this is the result we're going to get. I don't, there have been many times where I don't go, well, what if this doesn't work? What's the outcome? And I've been in that scenario, and I think we tend to lean towards, we bet on ourselves a lot, right? Mm-hmm. And when we bet on ourselves, failure doesn't really play into the thing of what we're not used to failure. We're not really thinking that's a possibility. But if you don't look at it and go, hey, at the end of the day, it's data, not drama. Yeah. And when we start believing our own story sometimes of like, oh, we're always going to succeed. We're always going to be great. We're always going to do this. We're not going, it's when we start believing in that, we start moving on emotion, not data. And so absolutely, man.
Yeah. It's a disciplined approach, really. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what you end up learning over time. And again, why it's so important to have a mentor. And that's kind of the position I'm in now as an advisor. And I kind of see myself as a board member for several businesses where I can bring that perspective and that lens. Because if not, what you tend to have is an organization, a CEO, a team, people that are ungoverned, undisciplined. And so there's a lack of mitigating potential risks. And that's, I think, the job oftentimes of the leader is always looking at, what's around the corner. What's the potential? Yeah, we know the upside. We're going to dominate the internet. Right? We're going to launch all these businesses and whatever, scale to the moon. But who's actually looking at the potential downside and the risk, and how do we mitigate and hedge that? And that's a big process of what I'm constructing now from different frameworks that I'm building to help people with that. As I didn't have that, even with my mentors. Dude, I had mentors, but none from that perspective. It was all about growth and scale and the upside. Mm-hmm. There was very little on, okay, well, how do we mitigate and how do we look at the downside and consider that and make sure that we don't go down, right? Yeah. So.
Hey, listen to this, might have to take the uncommon advice.